Hello, everyone. Welcome to Unlearning. As you know, we love inviting experts in our podcast. This gives us an opportunity to, selfishly get to know new people, as if for myself, and for you guys to hear firsthand their thoughts and opinions. Today, I am very excited to have Millan, a celebrity fashion stylist and a proud transgender, to speak with us today about her experience as part of the LGBTQIA community. And I hope I said that right. Please also pardon my ignorance. Feel free to correct me if I make a mistake, but I'm here to learn as well. So welcome, Em.
Thank you for having me. And I guess the first na lang na I'd say is that I am in no way an expert too. So if there's an immediate correction already, but I would just really love to share. And I think it's a way of learning that we all share experiences with each other, and that's how we learn and become expert for ourselves.
Exactly. I guess I just want to get into it already, and for your also knowledge as well. I grew up studying in all girls school my entire life,
Oh
so
wow.
yeah. So it's being being gay or lesbian is not super uncommon to me, but I also have a lot of friends who are still in the closet right now. So I guess I also want to know from your experience. For people who don't know your story yet, could you tell us your journey of deciding to transition or how or coming out? How was that entire journey for you?
As a kid, I always identified as a gay boy, and I
Mhm.
didn't even know then because in the Philippines, diba, like if you're not straight, you're only gay, and
Mhm.
those are the only two options that you have. So I went to an all boys school, and
Mm.
then went on to university until I went into corporate, and then went into realizing that through the advent of social media, I guess, and the accessibility of information and my own research, I realized that I wasn't a gay boy. I realized that ever since, I have always identified as a woman. And there's a specific term for that pala. I didn't know that you're not just automatically gay if you're not straight. In fact, if you feel like a woman, identify as a woman, and are attracted to men, but you are born with the opposite gender, then you are transgender. That's when, I guess, if there's a term to be careful of, I didn't decide to be transgender or I didn't decide to transition.
Mhm.
It's just finding out um, which of the which into the flow chart do I go,
Yeah.
and which is the most proper label I could identify with. So
Mhm.
that's the quick story I have. And then since then, I decided to um, align my external identity with how I felt. So that's how
Okay.
I presented myself as a woman to the world already, and it has been the best feeling ever.
Yeah, I could imagine it's very freeing, right? Like you're just your
Very
true self. That's good.
liberating, yes.
And how was it with your family, for instance? Like, did they accept you fully, or was there any hesitations, or, yeah.
In a way, I have been very privileged, and I know this is an exception more of the norm. I grew up with a very Christian family. My father
Mhm.
was a pastor, and my mom was a very um, she was a deaconess and who works at the
Wow.
church. And ever since the first time I came out like as a gay boy, well, my teachers in school told them they outed me. You know, naman in the Philippines.
Crazy.
Um, there wasn't really hesitation from my parents, and I was very privileged, lucky, and blessed
Oh,
because of
so
that.
nice.
Yeah, so I know that's more of an exception because growing up in an all boys school too, I have friends who are like me who aren't as privileged, who
Yeah.
are malas. Some of them like get beaten up by their dads, and it's really really horrible. So ever since they accepted me for who I am, even uses some of Bible passages to really encourage other parents as well. And then when I grew older, that was just like 5 years ago when I turned 30, and I understood that I am trans and not gay. When they found out, I guess it's because we're all older now, and
Yeah.
it's easier to understand things. So it was really a more mature, or like a grown-up explanation without the drama of, okay, so this is, it's like, look, parents, I have a change in label. I'm not gay, I'm trans. There's nothing that changes about me. I'm still your child, but instead of your son, I am now your daughter. So it's more like that. And it was a very um, grown-up discussion that I had with them, and really
Oh,
nothing changed since then.
that's so good. I mean, I've also heard a lot of, yeah, unlucky stories, I would say. And it's good that you also had that experience. I guess this is also something everyone can learn from, right? Like at the end of the day, you're still the same person. At least
Yes,
your
I'm still,
morals, values, it's still
yes.
you.
And at the end of the day, I'm still their child. No matter what life I take or what
Yeah.
gender I identify with, I am still theirs. So
Yeah.
nothing can change that. And that's a wonderful thing. And I often talk to my parents about it. And they do
Oh,
also talk to other parents of LGBT kids. And
ah,
it's
nice.
really wonderful.
Yeah, they should spread the love.
Yes, it's all
Um,
about love. Anyway.
when I've also heard in other interviews that when you identified as a man for 15 years and felt that something was missing, did that impact your day-to-day life, maybe at work or your dating life, for instance?
Um, oh my gosh. Well, okay. It was for 30 years, not just 15, because I only
Oh,
turned
I'm
65 years
sorry.
old. Yes,
Wow.
yes. Um, and I don't know how to exactly answer that question, because as I was growing up, I never really thought that something was missing. You just get through the day and thinking that this is the life that we have, and it's not like I need more, I need more, I need more. I was just thinking na this is it, this is who I am.
Uh-huh.
I guess this is how I'll be.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't really realize what I didn't really realize what I lacked then, or that something was missing, or that there could be more to what I was feeling. It wasn't really
Uh-huh.
like that for me. But when I transitioned, and then I realized that I was a woman, and then that's when everything fell into place. That's where I felt, oh, it can feel better pala. I was just feeling uneasy, but I couldn't put a finger on it. I couldn't identify what was missing. I didn't even feel that I had a miserable life. No, 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 not at all.
Ah,
It
okay.
was, I just didn't really understand. Maybe I was too accepting of what my life was, I guess. But um, it was just the opposite. Like when I transitioned, that's when I realized that there is more to life, and everything felt comfortable. Everything felt more, everything flew more easier, everything flew
Yeah.
easier. It was more fluid. And
Yeah.
then that's when I understood myself more.
Yeah.
In terms of dating, well, yeah, of course I couldn't date much when I identified like as an effeminate gay man, because it was, I don't know, I guess because I wasn't secure about myself too. There wasn't any
Mm.
confidence. I was unsure, and it showed. It was actually in Germany when I realized I could be trans, because that's when I started doing Tinder before. And then the
Ah,
Germans are open,
yes,
there.
they are.
Yeah. So I guess in terms of dating, yes, of course, as a transgender woman, I know, because I know what I want, I know who I am, and of course I know also who would date transgender women.
Yeah, exactly. And I live in Berlin. So I think if there is anything more open than Berlin, I don't know what. It's also here where I learned the variety of in the LGBTQIA community. Honestly, I don't know what it's called at some point, but they just explained it to me that there's just so many variations, and I'm just so surprised and happy that everyone is starting to be open about these things, so that's good. um
Yes.
People in general, like for instance for me, I didn't ever imagine myself doing a podcast, for instance, because I was never such a social media person. It took a lot of, I don't know, like just a fuck it kind of mindset to really go into it. So it's really hard to leap for me into new things. And for you, as someone who had to take that huge leap, from being identifying yourself as a gay man and then transitioning, what would you tell your former self knowing what you know now based on that?
I think really just go for it and live your best life.
Mm-hmm.
When before I transitioned, I had so many fears and so many doubts. Of course, I see like transgender women and like look at them in awe and like, they're so beautiful. They
Yeah.
really are gorgeous, and I just wish I could live my life as they do without any fears or without any apprehensions on what the future might be for them. I was so scared before, like, what would my life be like in corporate? Could I still be accepted? Could I still be a successful transgender woman outside of, let's
Mm-hmm.
say, an industry that wasn't common for transgender women back then? Should I just do pageants? And nothing wrong with that, but it just wasn't for me. So I guess that was my fear back then. So if I could say something to my old self, it's really just go for it and make a life of your own. You will define your own success, and you will live unapologetically by being who you are.
Yeah, because it's also about being confident about who you are, and then it will eventually trickle down to the success that you want to have, right?
Yes, yes, yes. So that confidence will just flow.
Yeah. And if you could go back in time, would you have sped up that process, or would you still go through those years of being in that state where something was missing?
I read that question last night and I wasn't really sure how to answer that, because in one part of me, I really value all the experiences I've had. I
Mm.
mean, I've had 10 years in corporate, which helps me in now as a businesswoman. And I've learned so many things about myself back then that I'm not sure I could have learned if I transitioned, and maybe I would have shifted industries early on. But of course, there are some days that I think about what my life could have been like if I transitioned earlier, and if I really treaded a different path early on. But I guess there's no point looking at it now.
Mm.
I love who I am now, and I love my life already. And lessons are lessons, experiences are experiences. So I guess it's a yes and no. There are pros and cons to having that choice, but I'm glad I don't have to make it anymore. I'm glad it's a hypothetical question.
Yeah, no, I mean, I guess it's also about where you are now, right? Sometimes we
Yeah,
just
yeah,
don't know that
exactly.
there's always that end goal. It's a journey, right? This is what everybody's saying. It's a journey, and now you're here, and that's what's important. So I guess that's it.
Yes, yes, that's so true. Like where you are now, if I guess if I was unhappy, I would easily choose like change the
Mm.
past and rewrite my life all over again. But I like who I am now. I like the life I'm living. I'm so thankful for everything I've experienced and what I've learned, and it is what it is.
Yeah, exactly. What I also find very interesting about you is that and it doesn't happen to a lot of people as well, is that you have this unique perspective of identifying yourself as both man and a woman. We're also just generally curious, are there some things that you miss about being a man, or at least identifying as a man?
Oh my god! Actually, it's really just the shorter lines in the toilet.
That is so true.
It's really just the shorter lines. Um, but other than that, I don't think I miss anything. In fact, life as a woman is a lot more tedious.
Yes, it
It
is.
really takes time to be a woman, your eyebrows in the morning and
I
all
just
that makeup. So you really have to want it. And so
Mhm.
in that way, I don't miss any part of being a man. So really, hands up to women who have been living as women all their lives. And in that way pa, I still don't have the monthly periods pa. So parang, whoa,
Oh my God, it
really,
is a
kudos
lot
to
of work.
women talaga.
Magasto. Sorry, it costs a lot to be a woman.
Yes, that's one thing. So it's expensive. It is time consuming. It is what it is. So it's what I say to people when when there are bashers and thinking that choosing to be women is a choice and being transgender is a choice. It's really. Do you think I would choose to have a more difficult and more tedious and really more discriminating life? Of course not. So there.
Yeah, yeah. I know. It's really hard. And I guess the other way around, was there anything that surprised you about being a woman besides the costs and the feelings and stuff? Or
Well, I was thinking about that. It's really expensive to become a woman. And that's now where I appreciate. I mean, in some countries, tampons are free, birth control is free, even
Mm.
healthcare for women is free. I mean, they all add up, like your pads, even bras are expensive,
My God,
They're,
I
they're
forgot
all,
about that. That's true.
it's so costly to be a woman. It's so expensive. So that's what I think the only thing that's surprising about it for me. I mean, I'm sure there would be more things that could surprise me in the future, but offhand, it's really just that. So I would really now understand some bills in some states really pushing for
Mm,
legislatures for women. So yeah.
that's good. And so in every transition story in general, even with my friends, I think, sorry, even for me, there's always confusion, right? It's always, what is this? Who am I? What am I supposed to be? Most especially, I guess, if you lived and grew up in a very Catholic environment, it's always like, no, this is not who I am, right? Or I should stick to this one thing. And at some point, we feel lost. And I guess I want to ask, like, what advice would you give these people who feel lost at this time and who are currently in this stage of figuring themselves out?
Really, number one is explore. I think
Uh-huh.
if you're feeling lost, then do your part in finding out the way if you're lost. Like do your research, read up about it, watch different kinds of porn. I mean, there are many ways to explore now. Listen to podcasts like this. So there are so many ways in exploring. So I guess that's the first one, and the second one is take your time.
Uh-huh.
Um, there's no pressure in having a label for yourself or finding out for yourself at a certain time. The sooner or later you find out in life who you are, it doesn't really matter. So I guess those are the only two things that I can give to those who are confused and couldn't find their way. So it's really explore, but take your time. No
Yeah.
pressures. You are the only one that will validate or invalidate who you are.
The more I talk to you, the way you answer things is always so logical with reason.
I
Honestly,
tried.
it's so fascinating that it's really driven by logic. No, because me and my co-founder Roxy, like, we always encourage this too. Like, a lot of people right now are so angry and emotional, and what we want to say is like, dude, like, just chill for a bit and think about what exactly you said. Okay, like, let's think. So I appreciate that a lot.
Thank you. It's one thing that, of course, not all the time, but most of the time, I try to really also listen to understand, like seeking to understand. There's so much misunderstanding in the world already, and I want this to be like a joyful discussion. It shouldn't be like this is the right thing. You're wrong. You won't be saved. Yung mga ganyan.
I know. um during this entire pandemic, it became so apparent, self-love became so apparent, right? Like to have a mental health check, to really think about what you want and need in life. So if you could only advise one way to show yourself some self-love, what would it be?
I think a lot of people really like equate self-love with just like 2 hours in the tub or going to the salon or having like a mani-pedi. And yes, that could be true, you know. For some people, that's the way to express their self-love. But for me, um, during this, especially during this pandemic and lockdown, it is really just giving yourself a pat on the back, even with doing nothing. And it's okay to not be okay. It is still giving yourself credit for surviving and really not really even not going the extra mile of the extra pampering or the extra luxurious things in life at the moment. But I think for me, that's my most um, that's the self love I realized during since 2020.
Yeah. And I guess that's also something that, I mean, just looking at your Instagram feed or your online profile, I really admire how you're not afraid to be you, like it's so hard these days as well because social media has really pushed us to, I don't know, have those six-pack abs or having that luscious long hair. And I guess it's so it's so refreshing, right? To really have to not be afraid of who you are. So I just wanted to ask, was there any time or situations wherein you felt apprehensive about how you'd be treated or perceived, or like hesitated about not being your true self?
Um, I think that's the thing with transgender or maybe LGBT people because that will always be an everyday struggle
Mm.
until we can say that society and the world is truly equal, you know, like all
Mm.
opportunities are available for everybody. There will always be a hesitation, whether it be life choices, career opportunities, or social media posts. There will always be at the back of your head hesitation about how will people take it? How will people
Mm.
understand what I am saying? How will people perceive what I'm trying to convey? Um, but then again, it's really who you are, what you stand for, your confidence and everything, and you know your online persona and offline persona that you want to reflect to everybody else. So
With your online persona, I guess I'm also curious, like, how do you treat or respond to these haters? Like, I'm sure there are a few.
yeah, yeah. I pick them. I choose my battles. I mean, I really don't. I don't. I admire people who just can respond to everybody. And I wish I had that emotional bandwidth. I don't. I don't have that patience. And I guess I would really discern who to respond to. There are commenters who are just out there to spread hate, and really just to promote negativity. And no matter how much you talk to them, they have already made a decision. As much as possible, I would like to talk to people who are willing to understand and are truly curious and really want to get educated and have a chance. I'd like to invest my my emotions into those kinds of conversations as well. I mean, I couldn't um, just respond to everyone who throws into my page. And if there's one subset of this advocacy, for me it is equality in the workplace. That's one thing that I
Mm.
always make sure I respond to. So that's because that's where my past life was, and I had experienced discriminations there. So I guess those are the criteria by which I choose to respond to comments.
Yeah. And I guess with those discrimination, I could imagine that it also kind of damages your self-confidence and self-esteem. I mean, we're human beings too, right? Like we
Yeah,
all.
yeah, yeah. There are some, at some point, yung mga bakla-bakla, or like when they call you like gay, fagot, to a point they don't really matter anymore. But some still really are very hurtful, especially when they use the Bible to negate your existence. So all those things, they somehow, of course, they are admittedly hurtful.
Mhm.
And if they're not really willing to listen to what you have to say. So yeah.
Yeah, that's crazy. And if you, I mean, you're such a busy, successful individual.
Wow.
Wow. Like just like any other person, I guess I'm also curious, or I actually want to get some advice from you. Like sometimes we just don't feel 100%, right? Sometimes we're just not in the moods. And
Yes.
how do you deal with those anxieties when you just don't feel like working or being your best?
Then take your time to detach, tune out,
Okay.
understand yourself, your triggers, and then work on them one by one at your own time. You don't have to be everything for everyone all the time. I guess that's the pressure that we have right now. Everybody's online personas are very glossy.
Mhm.
Uh, they're all, this quarantine, everyone is praised for being the most productive selves. Um, so you define your own success. So if you're not in the mood to really be your best right now, and that's perfectly fine. There are days that you will be on top of your game, and when you're not, then just don't feel pressured about it. Then just detach, be with yourself.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I also had that feeling during the pandemic. I'm just like, because I promised myself, which everybody did, that I will learn German during the pandemic. And of course, it didn't happen. So while everybody just started learning Mandarin, I'm here in the country and still not learning any German. So I'm just like, okay.
See, I bought 3 books, I haven't restarted any.
Okay lang, may 2021 pa. It's fine. Everyone should chill. And I guess with that, like in your recent experience, or sorry, which recent personal life experience has taught you the biggest lesson?
There's really no one life experience to identify like the biggest lesson. But if I relate it back to my experience in sexuality, it would definitely be my transition. And it's not just like one life experience, because it is a continuous process. So it made me understand everything about sexuality and gender and identity, that it's not just binary. So that's one thing that I'm really unlearning, that it's not you're just either male or female, and everything is fluid. And until now, I'm continuously learning. So until now, it's continuously shaping who I am, and I'm welcoming every single time I have the opportunity to learn about it. Then I welcome that.
Yeah. And if we go back to the Philippine society, for instance, if you had to rate between 1 to 10, 10 being the most accepting, how do you think, how accepting Filipinos are of the LGBTQ community? What would your rating be?
I would say we're above average. I
Mm,
guess it's like an 8,
yeah.
maybe. We see them on media. They're celebrated. They're celebrated. It's okay to have friends who are LGBT, and they're also common. I mean, it's not like we're punished by the law for being gay in some other countries, but in a way, we're not a perfect 10, such that we are still we still don't have equal rights. We're still not protected by the Philippine law. Um, very much discriminated by the Catholic community. So because of those roots of Catholicism and because of the absence of legislation for the community, it's still not very close to 10.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's very surprising, no, because like the likes of Vice Ganda, for instance,
Yeah.
they're basically the biggest celebrities in the Philippines and they're openly gay. And it's just so fascinating that people are accepting of that. But then in their personal lives, when they're personally affected, then it's not okay. And
Yes.
and I don't appreciate that personally.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah. There are a lot of stories like it's so happy to have like a gay friend, but as soon as my son becomes gay,
right.
I couldn't accept that. Or like it's so happy to have like gay friends, but you guys can't marry or you guys can't have the same civil union rights as straight people. So those are things that we really need to think about because that's really it's like double standard na
Mm-hmm.
and they just cherry pick which ones to follow, which ones to
Exactly. Whatever benefits them, I could.
whatever benefits them, yeah. Whatever's
And
convenient.
exactly. And as a society, what steps do you think we have to take to become more accepting of the LGBTQ community? Do you think the Soji law is enough, or is that just one step towards equality?
I wouldn't immediately I'm sure it's not enough, but it is the most immediate step towards that goal of equality. I mean, if I compare it to a lot of other countries, I mean, in the US, there's still a lot of issues versus race and and even male female gender. And in the Philippines, it's so backwards that even sorry, I didn't mean to say backwards. It's so I guess delayed in terms of those legislation in terms of for Soji
Mhm.
because we don't even have that in place yet. But that's the most immediate step
Mhm.
towards a more accepting society.
Yeah. And do you imagine the Philippines actually having same-sex marriage, for instance, or being doing these things like other countries are?
I dream about it. Yes, definitely I dream about it. Realistically, I'm not sure whose lifetime they can be achieved. I would like to do my part and work towards that goal. Um, there are still a lot of steps that we need to take, a lot of things we have to unlearn. We're still, I guess, ilan ba, 85 to 90% Catholic.
Yes.
So it's really a very tough cookie. So
Yeah, I don't think honestly I also don't think I don't think it's going to happen in our lifetime. I think there's just so much that's happening. Otherwise, we can just all go to Europe or the States and get married. So,
or
whatever.
like, yes, diba? Or my best friend just got married in Australia. So
Oh yeah, true. Australia too. See, everybody's
really
open.
true.
So, um,
Yeah, yeah. I mean, even in the Philippines, the only country without divorce. So I mean, yun pa lang. So it's really how backwards. Is it right to say backwards? But it's really how different.
it is, yeah. It's only the Philippines and the Vatican City
Yeah,
that has no divorce, which for
yeah,
me is always fascinating. Like, ang galing. Ganun na ba tayo kagaling at what is happening?
levels with the Pope.
Yeah, and I guess we asked this to all of our guest speakers. We have three ending questions that to end the podcast. And I guess my first question is, what is something you used to believe in but have unlearned?
That gender is fluid. So
Oh.
I think before I just believed that gender was very binary. Either you're male or female, you're
Mhm.
either man or woman, you're either gay man or a gay woman. So those are the only two buckets available for you. But what I have learned is that I need to unlearn that, and gender is fluid and it can change over time, and those feelings are valid. Nobody can tell you what you feel and what you should feel and who you should be attracted to.
Yeah, exactly. Amen. and and if you had to make a law that would make the world a better place, what would it be? Anything under the sun.
It is, I think, now kasi we're pushing for laws to state the equality, and
Uh-huh.
if you don't see them as equals, then you can be punished for it. In the future, the ideal state is that there are no laws for that anymore, that it doesn't matter at all. It doesn't matter if you're black or white or Asian or trans, because these aren't identifying factors of who you are really in I mean your deepest self. In the future, the ideal state for me is there is no law to implement based on sexuality or race or gender.
Mm-hmm.
So if there's an answer to that, I guess there is. The vision is to have like no law. Huh? Tama ba?
Yeah. No, but it has to be normalized, right? I think that's what
Normalized. Yeah.
exactly. Dapat it's so normal that there's no law for it, basically.
Exactly. There. I mean, I went back to my office a couple of years ago and they were talking about like the new CEO making news because she was the first woman CEO of a pharma. So is that my ideal end state? And I said, no, my ideal end state is that that won't even make the news, because why should it be a big deal that she's a woman and she's a CEO? I want that normalized.
Exactly. I exactly know what you mean. Yes. That's also how I feel about like women leaders. And yeah, because
Yes.
I had this conversation with a friend here too, because he told me that they changed their hiring process here in Germany already, that the management team should be 50% female. And then I said, why is that a rule? Like, isn't it normal that you just be judged according to your skills in general?
Yes.
So I was
Yes.
I was so confused. Honestly, I was
Yes.
like, huh? Why is that a rule now? Like, and apparently they also, if a woman applied in that company, um, kahit na their skills are not 100%, they will let them go to the next stage because she's a woman. So then I'm also confused. Then I was like, so now you're just judging me because I'm a woman and not my skills. So I like that people are changing, definitely. But I also feel like parang it's a petty law. I don't know. Like,
Yes. Yes. For me, it's also like, it goes both ways too. I mean, at some point, I'm happy that there's legislation for that, and that people are really forced to look into to those things, and in the same way, employees who are really skilled enough can have something back to employers. But in other ways, it's also being defined by your gender,
yeah,
and then you are defined by it, when in fact, especially for corporate, it's your
mhm,
competence.
exactly. Yeah, I like that. That we shouldn't be defined. Yes. um, my last question to end this, and again, thanks for your time. What are you still unlearning right now?
ah uh it is in the, this is really connected to the first
Mhm.
question, because I have not fully unlearned um, gender buckets, and like, how gender is binary.
Yeah.
Admittedly, sometimes I call my transition friends like with the wrong pronouns. I
Mhm.
make mistakes too, and it's a continuous learning process. I still read up as much as I can on
Yeah.
on new terminologies, on how it's so new to me too. I mean, I've only transitioned 5 years ago, and the world has really just defined or put labels fairly recently. So I wouldn't say I'm an expert or that I know everything. So I'm continuously unlearning and learning all those things too.
Yeah, that's good. I mean, everybody, it's about the curiosity to learn, right? Not just
Yes,
being stuck in that mindset na this is only the genders we have, basically.
yes, yes. It's
Yeah.
it's I guess a lot about intent as well.
Yeah, exactly. Which I'm also still learning right now too, because like there's also so many pronouns that I now have to figure out and how to call them. Like I also feel bad, right? Because if they called me, let's say, a man and I'm a woman, I could also be pissed at that. So I also want to be careful. Like, yeah, but sometimes it's learning. I'm getting there too.
Yes, yes, yes. In the same way that I am transitioning as a person, the society is also transitioning to the new me. So it's a give and take learning process.
Yeah, exactly. Cool. I guess that's also the end of the podcast. Again, I really just want to say thank you so much for being with us here today. I think this is
Thank
so
you, thank
valuable.
you.
We will try. So we're actually launching this during February, so Valentine's kind of weeks. So we actually want to push that kind of love to the community that
Ah,
everybody deserves to be loved in general.
it's so cool, so cool.
Okay. Do you want to say any last words to our listeners?
Ano naman, I mean, thank you for having this, and it's really great to have as much avenues of learning and unlearning. As I said earlier, there are unlimited opportunities to know more about yourself, and this is just one way to really understand who you are. And if there's somebody else who's struggling identifying themselves, then this could be an answer.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you so much, and I wish you a great
You,
day, great rest
you
of the.
too.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye.
Bye.